go ahead and call the October 25th SAU 21 Joint Board School Board public hearing and meeting to order. And I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Got this. There you go.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to go ahead and open the public comment, public hearing.
Public hearing on the gift from the brook.
Yes.
I think, did you want to speak to it?
Sure. So, if you recall, earlier this year, actually it was last fiscal year, we accepted a donation from the brook in the amount of $115,000 for the purpose of an SAU-wide social worker. At that point, we had posted a legal notice for the $115,000 as an estimate, and that was the check that we received from the brook. However, subsequent to that notice and public hearing, when we went through the hiring process, the position was slightly higher at $120,050. So at that point, we reached out to the brook, and they donated the additional $5,050. So at this point, we need to do another public hearing to accept that balance. So that's the purpose of this public hearing.
Super. Thank you, Matt.
Can we speak on this if we want to?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know if this is irrelevant to the donation, but I was a little disappointed at the brook that evening because I felt that one of the speakers that was there spoke on behalf of some political bills that were inappropriate. And it concerned me that we were there hosting an SAU 21 event, and there was a political speaker that spoke on behalf of bills that had to do with taking parental consent away. And there were residents in our town that were also there, as well as selectmen, that were not happy about the situation either. So they are not in favor, as tax residents, of accepting a social worker that came from that type of event. So I'd like that to reflect the record, because this was a school-sponsored event and it should not have been a political discussion. So that's my take on it.
Thank you, Kelly. Anyone else have anything to discuss?
I thought it was outstanding. I'm so lucky that I went to see the message there. That night was just, words can't describe. I was really taken aback as to the, first of all, the generosity, the heartfelt passion that these people have towards mental health in our school system today. It really hit home with me. Everyone who spoke, Andre included, we're so lucky to have this opportunity and this generosity again, and right next door. I was impressed by the whole event. Came home and talked to my son about it. He's in high school. He knew right away who Maddie was, and she was a high schooler who spoke. Thoroughly impressed with, and it just gave me hope and about, these are the type of kids that this school is producing, and really high praise. Meredith, kudos to you for just a wonderful evening. Did a fantastic job. And again, I hope it's here to stay. I encourage everyone to engage and be a part of it. And we're very lucky, very lucky.
To piggyback on that, I do want to give a special shout out to Maddie Eaton. Sorry, because she's a Seabrook resident and she spoke at that event like probably better than I could have. So I just want to give her a special shout out. We're very proud of her in Seabrook and beyond that, but we're very proud of her.
Should be.
Awesome. Anyone else have any comments?
Just briefly, I didn't hear anything to speak, but I just feel a sense of pride in our collective communities, in our willingness to come together and tackle a very, what I find a very serious issue facing particularly our young people who have really had a lot to face. This weekend, I had an opportunity to attend the Patriots game. Actually, see them win. But my point is that they did a presentation on mental health, and there you had 60,000 people who were engaged and touched by again an organization in our community who's advocating for the betterment for our young people. So I really think this is going to catch on. We're in a good position. It's a good time, and I'm a big supporter of this time.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments? Okay.
Just make sure there are no public comments
No
before
public comments? Anyone
before you
else?
close the public hearing.
Beyond? Okay, at this time, I'm going to be closing the public hearing. Thank you all for taking the time to make some comments about this.
Is it public comments now?
Yes, it's coming up in just a moment.
Right after this.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, now I'd like to go ahead and open the public comment section of our meeting. If anyone would like to talk and contribute, we welcome you.
Sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to make sure I missed something and then find out I went at the wrong time. Anne Marie Banfield, 7 Highlander Drive in Northampton. I had sent some emails a while ago regarding medical care for students, if they receive medical care in the school. And superintendent had sent me the policy, which is a good policy. I like the policy. I don't have a problem with the policy. The problem is when a school-based health clinic comes into the school, what we're finding is that they're not getting parental consent when they're treating kids. I just want to make you aware of that. There was an incident in Maine just a couple of weeks ago where a girl came home with a bag of pills, Zoloft, and they have a school-based clinic in the school, and he was not aware, and so the school or the clinic is saying that they don't need parental consent because it's federally funded, and this is what I'm finding in from other examples of school-based clinics. I just want to make you aware. Maybe the policy needs to be expanded. I'm already talking to legislators about expanding the law to cover the school-based clinics. That medication, by the way, can create suicidal thoughts. So needless to say, I think it's important that parents know. So if they see something going on with their children, that they know possibly that it's the medication. A couple more things. Yeah. So in addition, when the father found out, the father pulled his daughter out of the school. Needless to say, it angered him. And then Child Protective Services was called on him, and he believes it was done in retaliation. And I've talked to legislators up in Maine about this, so they're aware of it. Looking at it too. I think parents will automatically lash out at administrators if something like that happens. And I think it's important to make sure that all of our ducks are in a row. And so that's why I'm coming here tonight. I don't want a firestorm to erupt if we were to go down that path. I think that's the way that you avoid a firestorm. I think that was all I wanted to bring to your attention. Just wanted to make sure that you were aware of this. I do have a copy of the article. I only made 2. I see there's plenty of you, so maybe you can pass it around. like I said, I did confirm all of this with legislators in Maine, that what was reported was accurate. Just wanted to bring it to your attention. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. We have
Just note that-
27 minutes left in public comment. Should anyone enter the room, we'll be able to give them some time to speak as well. Okay, moving on. Approval of the minutes from the May 24th, 2023 joint board meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the May 24th, 2023 SAU joint school board meeting.
All those in favor?
Can we do the other?
Yes.
Any abstentions?
Any abstentions?
Okay, anybody that you weren't there? Okay. Right.
There's-
So if you were abstaining, could you hold your hand up?
Oh, yeah, I definitely wasn't here.
Sorry.
I was not here.
You weren't on the board of that.
Does it say who was?
Right.
And-
Yeah, abstain.
Yeah, sorry.
So I'm gonna Anthony and
Desiree, Tamara, is abstaining,
Yeah.
Michelle and Kelly.
thank you.
All those in favor?
Everyone else.
Unless I should have done the opposed.
I should have done a roll call, right?
Okay.
Oh, I already know about this.
All right. Sorry.
Motion passed, 16 yeses, 0 noes.
There you go. Moving on to it.
Thank you. All right, moving on. The acceptance of the gift from the Brook.
Make a motion to accept the donation of $5,050 additional funding from the Brook for the full-time social worker position for 1 year to serve the SAU 21 school districts.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
So, hold on. I'm just gonna do a roll call, make it easier. Anthony? Barbara?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Danielle?
Yes.
Desiree?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Jennifer?
No.
Jill?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Kelly?
No.
Lauren?
Yes.
Leslie? Yes. Michael?
Yes.
Michelle?
No.
Nicole?
Yes.
Patrick?
No.
Tamara?
Yes.
Tricia?
Yes.
And Wendy?
Yes.
Motion passed, 15-4.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the SAU 21 budget proposal for fiscal year 2025.
Is it not on here?
Should be loaded. I have a whole bunch of attachments.
Oh, that's weird. It's like it's not.
This is like, are you in the public version?
I know this is why we got such a good turnout at this meeting.
I was like clicking.
I would try refreshing, but try logging back in. Because it's all been in since it was sent out.
Yeah. I mean, and I saw it anyway, so.
Well, I'm just gonna.
There we go.
Direct.
Yes, I was not joining. I was just browsing.
Oh, my thing's charging.
Move over to the-
Right. So, I know you're all excited to get into budget season. This is the official kickoff, the first formal presentation. Many more to come. I do want to thank the operations committee for working on this budget, reviewing it, and bringing it forth to the full joint board. I know it is a lot of work to go through all the documents and the supporting information. So I do appreciate your attention to detail and going through the the lengthy process that is budgeting. So just to remind you, I think we have mainly veterans here, but just to remind everyone, the SAU budget is a little different than the school district budgets, right? So this is not going to go onto a ballot for warrant article for the voters to vote on. What the process for the SAU budget is such that the joint board votes on the budget. We have a public hearing, which will occur in November, and then the joint board will reaffirm that vote, and then the SAU budget gets allocated or put into each individual school district budget, which then goes to vote at ballot individually. So this is an important piece of your role as the joint board members to review and approve the SAU budget. So as you're aware, the SAU, that our role is to bring together our districts and try to create a collaborative model where we best serve all the districts, both from a service perspective, but also cost efficiency, looking at shared costs, shared resources, and efficiencies where we can, again, provide better service at a lower cost. However, also being cognizant that each individual district has its own individual culture, needs its own autonomy. So maintaining that identity by district. So that's reflected, through our attempts to maximize economies of scale, cost efficiencies, shared personnel, and you see that actually the first item here is the ESOL shared service resource. So that's an area where we have an SAU-wide ESOL teacher who we're able to hire a full-time provider and share that resource across multiple districts rather than have individual districts hire a part-time person, which is very difficult to do. And oftentimes you don't get the same quality of candidate pool when you're looking at part-time positions. And we do that at a lower cost. So we share those costs between the districts. The SAU has, over the last year, led by Dr. Hobbs, has really done a lot of work in putting together the Portrait of a Learner planning process. We've done a lot of investment in technology. That's both to streamline the processes, but also, again, to save costs. Obviously, it's less expensive if we have one subscription as opposed to 5 individual subscriptions, for example. We've done over the last, probably 5 years, we've been doing a lot of work implementing the competency-based education learning process across all of our districts. We've instituted curriculum review processes to try to align curriculum across our districts, where in the past that has not always been the case. We've really taken a hard look at special education. So we all know how volatile special education costs are and how those costs have increased over the years. So we've really made a concerted effort to try to align our practices, our processes, and look at overall SAU programming in order to try to minimize those special education costs while also serving our students in the best possible manner and delivering service for our students who have specialized needs. We've implemented the educator evaluator process and provide training for administrators across all of our districts at the SAU level. And then we've also done some comprehensive emergency planning in coordination with our first responders. We have a SAU-wide committee to ensure that all of our first responders are coordinated across all of our towns and not just individually by town, because obviously in the event of an emergency, it's not going to be, particularly with Winnicott, it's not going to affect just one town. And our SAU emergency operations plan. So those are just a few areas where that SAU model provides benefit to each of the individual districts. So when we're looking at budgeting, enrollment is an important metric. A number of our districts have seen some enrollment declines over the last few years, and that's important to note as we budget, both from a short-term and a long-term perspective. That's going to affect our staffing. That's going to affect our our supplies and the monies that we allocate by grade level, by school level, and SAU wide. So, this is an area that is we're keenly aware of. We do conduct enrollment projections on an annual basis. So we are looking at a slight decrease from 2,257 students this current year to a projected 2,236 students for next year. And that's based on our enrollment projections that I just referenced. So, the big slide, what's the total cost? So for FY25, the proposed operating budget that's going to be assessed to each individual district is $2,205,952. So that's inclusive of revenue. That's an important note because in a couple slides, I'm going to talk again about ESOL services, and that's an item that is budgeted for, but then we receive reimbursement through revenue from the individual district. So this is including the revenue is important when we're talking about how we assess each individual district on an annual basis. So that's an increase of 2.88% or $61,852 over prior year. So that's a pretty modest increase when looking at cost escalation in our inflationary environment that we've all been living through over the last few years. So what does this mean for each individual district? So I've outlined the specific cost versus last year. You'll see it's slightly different on a percentage basis. Because even though the overall increase is 2.88%, each individual district, that percentage is slightly different because the SAU's budget is allocated by a formula based on property valuation and enrollment. And every year, that changes slightly. You may either add students or lose students, or the town's property valuation may change. Not a huge variation from year to year, but you will see, for instance, we just reviewed the Northampton budget, and that's increase from 285 to 298 is actually 4.75%, as opposed to overall 2.88%. Whereas the Winnicott increase is less than 2.88%. And that's purely based, again, on that formula that calculates the allocation. So when looking at the budget, there's always a number of budget drivers that have a significant impact to the budget, either increase or a reduction. So this year is no different. We had one major budget driver this year, and that's health insurance. I particularly note that because this is going to affect every one of our district's budgets as well. We have been quoted a guaranteed maximum rate of 23.7% for our health insurance premiums. Now that's not the actual rate that we are going to that we're going to eventually pay out. That's determined in March, and it's an 18-month trailing claims history. However, that is the maximum. So, for instance, last year, the actual rate ended up being the guaranteed maximum rate. So there's no guarantee that it will be reduced. However, we have noted that in prior years, when there's been a large increase like this for the guaranteed maximum rate, there's usually a larger differential when we get the actual rate, and it typically comes down. That's no guarantee, but that also offers us the ability to hedge a little bit and under budget by making some educated forecasts. For our school districts that have health insurance expendable trusts, we can significantly under budget health insurance, knowing that we have those trusts available should we need to utilize them. So the second item that's affecting the budget is the cost of living adjustment. So we have our annual cost of living adjustments for our staff. The bulk of the budget is personnel. That encompasses most of the SAU costs. So that we have included a 2.8% cost of living adjustment. As you know, we benchmark our SAU-wide non-union cost of living adjustment to the documented rate of inflation. We benchmark that to CPI, so the Consumer Price Index for the Portsmouth region, our geographic area, for the 12-month period from July to July. So in this case, this is the rate of inflation from July of 2022 to July of 2023. And then the final item that affected our budget was technology. So we did have a server failure recently, and so we do need to replace that server, and the remaining 3 servers are reaching end of life. So we are looking to invest in a virtualized server, and that's the system that we utilize currently in the districts, as opposed to multiple physical servers. It's a virtual server, and then it's run off a single device, a single server in-house. But you don't have that risk of losing that data. Additionally, we are up for our 2-year firewall licensing. So that's a 2-year subscription. Last year was 0. This year, it's due for the next 2-year agreement. So that was a couple $1,000s that was increased. So I actually just addressed the cost of living adjustment, but again, that's benchmarked to inflation in our geographic region. And I will note that is reflected in each of the districts' budgets. So all non-union employees, we are proposing a 2.8% cost of living adjustment for those staff members. So let's get into the meat of the budget by department. So we do have the improvement of instruction department budgeted at $43,781. That is a slight decrease of $355. This account provides for the professional development funding and salary support for our continued competency-based education initiative, any curriculum work that we're doing. So we give stipends to staff members who do curriculum work or on these vertical teams, leadership stipends, and that's really that's in Dr. Hobbs' wheelhouse as far as really that ongoing professional development, training, and increasing our instructional skills and capacity for our teachers. Our Board of Education budget is $53,896. This is also a slight decrease of $2,520. That is primarily due to a decrease in labor relations costs. So labor relations is our legal counsel for any bargaining that we may have in the SAU. So, for example, last year we had bargaining for our C association for our teachers contract. This year we had bargaining for our CESPA contract for our paraprofessionals. Next year, knock on wood, assuming a successful CESPA warrant article, we will not need legal counsel, labor relations for the budget. We did have, we also had a slightly lower contracted services forecasted based on expenditures. Those reductions were slightly offset by an increase in our legal accounts, and this is due to our ongoing and expected legal expenditures at the SAU level. So that'd be like right-to-know requests that we receive. The Office of the Superintendent is budgeted at $913,462. That's an increase of $108,526. So this is when I referenced the ESOL services. So this is a bit of a misnomer. So that we are adding one ESOL teacher at the SAU level. This isn't a net increase, so we currently have 3 ESOL teachers across the SAU. We're going to maintain 3 ESOL teachers at the SAU. Across the SAU, it's just not going to be, we're going to have 2 at the SAU and 1 at Seabrook. Currently, we have 1 at the SAU and 2 at Seabrook. So the reason for that is needs change. We have students that have needs for second language, assistance through an ESOL teacher. Seabrook's needs have decreased, whereas and Winnicott's needs have increased. So this allows us the flexibility to move the teacher around to the district that requires those services. So we're able to cut an ESOL teacher from the Seabrook budget. We're going to put the ESOL teacher in the SAU budget and then allocate it by district based on the specific needs of the district. So Winnicott is actually, we're anticipating 1.2 teachers there, whereas Hampton Falls is like 10% of a teacher. Northampton is I think half a teacher. Seabrook is they have their 1 existing teacher and then slightly more than that, maybe another half a teacher. So how that works is we budget for it, and then each individual district will have this as a line item that will be contracted services to the SAU. So you've seen this in previous years, but I just want to review it again with you just so that you understood. I know it's a little convoluted.
Is that fixed in stone, or if that modifies, the actual allocation? Does that get, those numbers, the payment per district, does that change?
It changes every year, and that's why.
I know you do it preemptively. This is what we think you're going to use as a district, but if that actually changes during the school year, does that get reflected? So
it's essentially we're looking a year. It's a year behind, okay. Right? So it is based on actual need, yep. But of course we're budgeting a year in advance, so that could potentially change. But yes, it'll be based on how many students does Hampton Falls need, or how many days does Hampton Falls need, how many days does Winnicott need, how many days does Seabrook need, and then we bill it accordingly.
So question, so it essentially comes out of Seabrook's budget, but then gets added back on the budget?
So in this case, Seabrook is removing 1, and you're adding a half a teacher. Yeah. So you're going from 2 to 1.5. It's just coming out of the SAU instead of straight in your budget.
So basically cut her whole salary.
So
cut half of her salary.
Basically, yeah.
So like this year, for example, we have 2 ESOL teachers at Seabrook. We only really need 1.5. So we're
so that, like, quote unquote half a teacher, like whenever our ESL needs help, she can come over and help. Is that like what we're saying? Or are we just paying for 1.5 teachers but only having 1 there at Seabrook?
No, you're gonna have that teacher's gonna go to Seabrook and be there for the half the time. Okay. Yes.
They're anticipating like how often.
It just gives us the ability to move them between districts, because currently, if you're assigned to a district, it's difficult to without everyone agreeing to move them around, because the actual teacher is contracted with Seabrook, so they have to agree to work over at Northampton or Hampton. And they could say no, and they could say, for the CBA, they don't have to. So this gives us the ability to move them around as we like. So it's really a win-win. I know it's a little messy, but it saves everyone money, and it allows us to have full-time positions as opposed to like part-time positions by district. And then additional expenditures in the Office of Superintendent include the staff cost of living adjustment, and then we had a slight increase in our supplies and workshop accounts. Our human resources budget is $167,383. That's an increase of $9,781. That reflects the cost of living adjustment as well as step increases. Our fiscal services budget is $566,643. That's an increase of $33,782. Again, that's cost of living adjustments, step increases for the finance team, as well as an increase in the financial software expenses. I'll note, I know you've all poured over the budget worksheets by account in detail, but there is, in full transparency, if you happen to miss it, the account from my salary looks a little larger of an increase. That's because last year I was promoted from the business administrator position to the associate superintendent position in that salary schedule. So we didn't budget for that. So it looks like a larger increase because it's reflected in 1 year as opposed to spread out between the 2 years, the actual expenditures. Our buildings budget is $34,290. That's a decrease of $3,361. So this account funds our normal repair and maintenance of the office, cleaning contract, electricity, insurance, our furniture accounts, and supplies. The decrease is due to a reduction in our electricity costs, and that's based on our SAU-wide energy contract. So that's another area where we utilize economies of scale to optimize our pricing. So we do an RFP and negotiate out all of our energy contracts SAU-wide to get better pricing for all of us, as opposed to it'd be higher rates if we were individual by district. Our technology budget is $122,056. That's an increase of $13,364. I had mentioned this earlier. We do have the one-time expenditure to virtualize our servers. Additionally, we have some increased software costs, but that reflects the firewall license as well as computer patch software. Again, that was the 2-year subscription, so this is the year that we owe. Our employee benefits budget is $623,359. That's an increase of $63,032. And then, again, that's due to the increased health insurance premium, as well as our retirement costs, FICA, and the additional health plan for the new ESOL teacher. So that reflects the health plan and the benefits for the ESOL teacher, but really that'll be billed out to the districts, and we'll receive revenue for that offsets it. So that brings us to the end of the budget. One last note is the SAU is slightly different from the school districts in that we cannot have expendable trusts in order to safeguard us against unexpended costs. However, we are allowed to roll over our unreserved fund balance from year to year. So our current balance is $331,784. And we do have a set target of $400,000. I'll note that part of this unreserved fund balance target includes anticipated capital improvement projects at the SAU. We have 2 projects that are on the horizon. One is the replacement of the SAU building's roof. We have had it inspected by our roofing consultant, and we feel we have about three, maybe 5 years left on that roof. And then the other potential capital project is an elevator. So we're currently grandfathered in as far as ADA compliance. However, it's really kind of a workaround. We could potentially be in a situation where we could be required to put in an elevator. Hopefully that's not the case, but we are preparing for that potential eventuality. So, be happy to answer all of your questions about the SAU budget. I'm sure you're, yep.
In regards to health insurance, do you go out and look at other providers to get better pricing every time, or do you always stick with the same provider?
So there's really two health providers that provide health insurance for your municipalities and schools in the space. There were a couple others that were smaller players that have kind of fallen off. So that is something that we do periodically price out, and in the case of a year like this, threaten to Health Trust. But yeah, we have limited options, but it is something that we look at. There's also ramifications when it comes to the CBA, because the CBAs actually indicate the types of plans. So it's not something we couldn't deal with, but it's another obstacle to actually making a change.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any like long-term deals that you can lock in for the health insurance, or is this year to year the increases happen?
Yeah, it's going to be an annual cost. I mean, I'd love to lock in a long-term deal, but I don't think any insurance provider would be foolish enough to. It would probably be a really large increase, though, if we were lock it in.
So, did you say that the 23% increase is a guaranteed, or that's the guaranteed maximum, right?
So that's the most it's going to cost us.
Okay, so do
However,
you think it's
we're
gonna
not
be
going
close to that? Because that's a lot of money. Because
It-
I know
it-
the town just got ours and it was 13%, and we were having a heart attack over 13%. This is outrageous.
It is a lot of money, and I do anticipate, or I am forecasting, that it's going to come down when we get the actual
Yeah.
rates in March.
Okay.
It's not a guarantee, but we are going to be budgeting based on some assumptions that we're going to make when we go through the school district budgets. And actually, we did reduce. I'm sorry, I didn't note that we did reduce the health insurance line item slightly based on that assumption here. We have more flexibility at the school district level because of our expendable trusts. And that we can get really aggressive with that.
You can't exercise this like that. Is that what I'm saying? I was just gonna ask that question. Could you hedge your vets here line item for a smaller amount and then take the residual from the reserve at the end of the year? Like we do at Hampton Falls, like with the other districts?
Yeah, I mean, we have the unreserved fund balance, that
So you
amount
can employ
too.
that for
So
that.
we did reduce it slightly. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I don't have that exact number on it. But we were, on a percentage basis, we were assuming a 5% reduction.
From the 23%.
Yeah.
Is it because I know Health Trust is it's a bunch of groups that the rate is not just rated on SAU 21's usage, but it's also like a pool of people that are in this?
Yes, that's correct.
So is the usage for SAU 21 high, or do you think this is based on the other
So
people in the
yeah,
pool?
so the state average
Yep.
for Health Trust was just over 19%.
Yep.
So we're higher than the state average, and that's based on our specific claims. Obviously, we can't go into details, but we anecdotally know of a number of
Yeah.
pretty heavy hitters
Okay.
when it comes to our health insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, that's just the way it is.
So the nature of the beast is if our employees use their health insurance, the prices go up the next go around.
Oh yeah, that's for every every organization that has health insurance is based, it's primarily based on your health insurance
Don't use it,
claims.
'cause
That's why it's
Just pay for
helpful
it, but
to
don't
be
you can't
part.
afford to use it, you can't afford not to use it.
That's why it's helpful to be part of a larger pool, because that typically brings the averages down. Because if you're a smaller group and you have like one very large claim, that can really affect your premiums. I know we're not the worst when it comes to schools. There are a number of schools, they actually capped it at 25%, but there were a number of schools that would have been higher if they didn't cap it. So.
And then if people don't use it in a year, we could see a decrease.
Yeah, but
That-
see,
or
we
just
had
not
our
as large
claims.
of an increase.
We did have that happen.
So that's the bet is that when we get the actual.
Is it always going up, like it'll just be a determination of how much
No,
it goes up every year?
I mean, so we actually had a year where we had a decrease.
Recently, right?
Recently.
I mean, while we were.
That being said, health insurance nationwide has been on a upward trajectory for the last 20 years. And when you look at school budgets as a whole, the two biggest drivers to increases in school budgets, no, it's health insurance and special education costs. Those are the two major drivers that have been driving school budgets nationwide over the last 20 years.
And there was no real way, it's just the nature of the beast, that there's no real way to even curtail that and try to make things easier on taxpayers. It just, prices go up.
Yeah, I mean, private businesses are dealing with this as well. I just read an article in the Wall Street Journal how it's record high health insurance premiums. The thing, there's, I'm hesitant to even mention it because I've seen various research that questions the efficacy of it, but wellness programs could potentially, if you encourage your employees to be healthy with these different programs, healthier employees mean lower claims. I've seen various research on that, on how effective those programs are, but that's one area where we can agree, and we do have wellness programs in place in all of our districts. It's a challenge.
Matt, what, if this gets voted down, what does the default numbers look like compared to these?
So there is no default. This is the budget. You have the opportunity tonight to adjust this budget. So if you could either decrease it or increase it, as a board. And then once you have a budget in place, you can it'll go to the public hearing. Then you'll reaffirm it. Once that's complete, it'll be the default budget in your individual budgets.
Our portion of it.
Right, that one account. It's one line item.
So how do we determine so I know we have the breakdown of which school pays, is there a more specific way to break this down?
Break down what?
So there's different categories, but the spreadsheet shows how much Seabrook pays, how much each school pays, but it's kind of like in a lump sum. It doesn't really give you a breakdown.
The budget worksheets are probably your best.
Right, but
Well, we don't break it down on by school by account, but it's the same percentage. I mean, you could do the math.
Yeah. I think the assessment by district page, which is one of the attachments in the presentation,
But that's the
how it's
total. I
calculated.
think Kelly's looking for the individual accounts, but it's the same percentage. So if you look at that assessment page, it also shows you the percentage. So you see the combined percentage up there. So for example, Hampton Falls is 6.6%, Northampton's 13.5%, Seabrook's 29.8%, Southampton's 3.2%, and Winnicott is 46.7%. So if you wanted to determine what each individual account is, how that's broken down, you could just take that percentage. It's really the total though that is gonna be in your budget. It's as one line item,
And it's based on the amount of students that we provide.
and your property valuation. So you can actually see it right there.
Right.
It's that formula.
Okay. Any more questions for Matt?
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. I'll make a motion to approve the SAU 21 budget proposals with
We're gonna wait.
Sorry.
I have a motion by Jill and seconded by Leslie to approve the SAU 21 budget proposal for fiscal year 2025.
Now you want to discuss.
Any discussions?
2.something% is great, Matt, thank you. Good work.
We need those adjustments to be a lot higher.
You wanna take a roll call for
Is it
votes?
Sure. Anthony?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Danielle?
Yes.
Desiree?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Jill?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Leslie? Yes. Michael?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Tamara?
Yes.
Tricia?
Yes.
And Wendy?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the SAU 21 budget proposal. No, I'm
On to the
sorry.
finance.
Yeah,
Because you wanted to hear Matt's.
sorry, finance. More
I can do it
finance.
again if you'd like.
No, sorry.
That's a nice thought.
Well, for some reason, my computer jumps and jumps back. It's
Yeah.
possessed tonight, so.
Yeah, I know.
Finance report,
I'll do a better job this time around.
there you go, take two.
So I have included both the fiscal year-to-date expenditure and revenue reports in board docs. On the expenditure side, we're tracking well. We have a current balance of $72,000, which may seem small to your individual districts, but that's a healthy amount for the smaller SAU budget. There are a few accounts I want to note. You'll see improvement of instruction. We haven't expended much. That's because most of those expenditures end up being paid out towards the end of the year because we're paying like salary stipends for employees to do a lot of that curriculum and leadership work that we talked about earlier. And a lot of the PD occurs as we go through the school year. Additionally, you'll see our labor relations and legal accounts are both over budget. Labor relations was based on our bargaining with CESPA, and legal, again, that's a good amount of right to know requests or SAU level legal counsel that we receive. In the Office of the Superintendent, we have a few accounts that are over budget, such as repair and maintenance of equipment, telephone, postage, supplies, and other expenses, excuse me. A number of those accounts we kind of have open POs for the year, so they're a little, so we haven't actually expended those yet, but you know, we did keep a pretty tight budget last year, so we might end up going over on some of those accounts, those discretionary accounts such as supplies or postage where we need to send stuff out, Then if you move down, again, not that I really want to point this out, but you'll see under fiscal services, my salary for, under first item, salary administration is over budget. That's the increase that I had received last year. That wasn't budgeted for. And then in information management services, you'll see we have software and new technology equipment that are both over budget, and that's some of those software issues and hardware issues that we've encountered this year that we've dealt with. And finally, I just want to note our our unemployment insurance is over budget by over $2,000. That was a larger increase than we expected through Primex. That's also reflected in this current year's budget, that increase. On the revenue side, you'll see we have some interest accruing on our investments. That's one plus to having higher rates. Additionally, we've started receiving our energy rebates through our group net metering arrangement. So just so you're aware, I think I've told you in the past, but all the group net metering revenue comes to the SAU. So that's for all of our districts. And then at the end of the year, we distribute those funds to the individual districts. And those are the credits that we receive or we're monetizing those energy credits through the hydro agreement. You'll see that there's under contributions and donations that $120,000. That's the donation from the Brook for the social worker. And then under other revenue is the $94,000 for the ESOL teacher. So that represents the one teacher that we have budgeted for this year. So the revenue that we receive from the schools that are utilizing that teacher this year. So I'd be happy to answer any questions as to where we stand this year.
No questions for Matt? Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
What?
That was public comment,
Oh.
but I'm just noting.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm a little punchy tonight.
It's okay.
Public comment has since closed down. Anyone else? No, I don't see anybody. Okay. I'm not gonna ask you to repeat that, even though my cursor's a little jumpy here. Next item is the fiscal year 2023 audit questionnaire.
That's me again.
Oh, thank you, Matt.
Lucky you. So
Three times the charm.
So you've all already gone through this process individually as school districts, but as you know, we, as part of our annual audit, our independent auditor, Plodzik and Sanderson, conducts an on-site visit. They review all of our financials, our backup invoices, POs. It reviews our policies and various financial controls. They interview us. And as part of that process, they ask the school board to complete a audit questionnaire about our financial management. So I have included the audit questionnaire with the answers that you provided last year. So this is your opportunity to make any adjustments or changes to those answers, at which point I will reflect those changes and then provide it to the board chair, who will sign off on it, and then I'll submit it to Plodzik and Sanderson. So if you, I'm sure, again, just like the budget, I'm sure you've looked at every question closely. If you have any changes, please let me know at this point.
Okay. No changes. Next item is the superintendent's 3-year goals update. Meredith?
Yes, so some of you will remember that starting last year, we wrote multi-year goals for the superintendent, and Rhonda has attached those. Those are part of the evaluation process that you all complete in the spring, along with other more broad, general, ongoing criteria of the other aspects of my job that I work on. And so these are tied to goals, and the hope would be that we'll talk about Portrait of a Learner goals a little bit later, but as we move into the Portrait of a Learner goals, that my goals will be tied to that work after this year. But for this year, we still have 3 goal areas. The first is Portrait of a Learner piece, And as I sent to you in an email earlier this week, the intent originally was to have our action steps and our measurable goals locked down this evening. At this point, we're going to need to push those out to January, so I'd be amending that and amending the bullet beneath that talks about progress report on those goals in January, March, and May to just say March and May. The second goal stands as written, which is really about our engagement, communications and community engagement. And so the next benchmark in that is the communications plan, which we'll bring to you in January for joint board approval, and then progress reports on the communications plan to follow. And then finally, our last goal is around curriculum instruction and assessment areas, and specifically making sure that at your meetings we're talking regularly about those areas. Because that was an important area of focus for us coming out of the pandemic, and we've started that process with doing meetings last year on a lot of those areas. Data will be the topic at all of your November board meetings, but continuing with that work again this year, the target area is 75% of your meetings this year. Something on curriculum instruction or assessment. So happy to answer any questions.
One that's sort of tangential to this. I'm just looking at sort of, in my mind, the progress against a lot of these, and obviously you've hit pretty much everything that we anticipated. I'm curious if you can offer a brief update on how it's working with the communications firm, though.
So this came up at the Winnicott meeting last week. I would say the communications firm is great, but they're not here, right? They're not on site. So as a contracted support, we have to be sending things to them. And we did a training with our full administrative team over the summer. They came in, spent half a day with us, really talking about how to craft pieces, what kinds of things are helpful. And I would say the year started, prior to the start of the year, late August, early September, everyone was raring to go and putting lots of stories forward, and then people got caught up in the flow of the year and weren't doing that. So I just did some reminders to my administrators like, hey, we talked about this, you've got great things going on, we need to sort of ramp up sharing out those tidbits. And I will say for my own part, the double duty piece has impacted my watchfulness about some of those stories. So we kind of re-hit the accelerator button last week with administrators. I think the firm can serve our needs really well, but we still have to do our part of that lift.
Is your intent to try and do that like monthly, or, I mean, that feels like a lot to me.
So for each building to put out a story once a month isn't a lot, I don't think, right? There's enough going on in our schools all the time that it's not hard to turn something from each of those schools into a story. Last week we were talking about the greenhouse at the high school. I sent a note to the principal like, hey, this would be a good one to highlight for the community. Northampton just had the students do the fundraiser for the disc golf course, right? That's another great thing to highlight. Seabrook has a parent play group that has just gotten off the ground for early childhood that's going really well. So there's lots to do, and there's something every month in our schools. I think, again, we have to train ourselves to be in the habit of sharing that good news. And it really is sending, a couple of sentences, right, to the PR firm, and they will craft that out into a story, right? Send a picture and a couple of bullets, and they can turn it into a piece that can be posted on the websites, can be shared out as a press release, can be featured on our Twitter feeds.
When those are shared
X
out, do
feeds.
we have any plans to do like email blasts from all the principals, just to be like, look what's happening in our, SAU?
So it's not difficult to do that. They come in a format that it's easy to do that. So again, most of our principals are in the habit of doing some form of newsletter on a pretty consistent basis. So it's easy to attach those, and then the same would be true. We'd hope to attach them in an SAU level newsletter on a monthly basis. We are also working on, we launched our mobile app site for all of our K-8 schools, a revamped mobile site, so it's better functionality with our existing websites. But we're working on a relaunch of our website overall. So we worked with our vendor, worked on templates, laid it out with them over the summer, and they've had some challenges with staffing and are behind on the completion of that project, but they've let us know actually last week as well that they're basically ready to go. So we're going to do a little work with our principals in early November and hopefully get that up and running before the holidays as well. Yeah, thanks for asking.
Sorry.
Dave or Mary or Matt, did I miss anything on the communications piece that you can think of?
Be prepared
They're
for,
the other half of my brain these days.
There's gonna be a heavy dose of CESPA CBA communication. So if you missed my tweets and Facebook posts and videos about the C contract, shortly the CESPA contract will be coming up. So.
Yes. My favorite acronyms.
There we go. Thank you, Meredith.
Okay.
Are we skipping over D? Portrait of a Learner.
No,
Okay.
Dave's gonna give you a little update.
Dave, Portrait of a Learner update.
Matt's just taking a seat there.
He's got his group
You're my color guy. Thanks. I'm here to give an overview or update on Portrait of a Learner, where we are, what we're up to. Unfortunately, we don't have those measurables for you tonight, but it's a good story. So coming off the approval of Portrait of a Learner themes that you guys approved spring of last year, we embedded those themes as part of the admin retreat. Obviously, we had a school kickoff at the beginning of this school year where we embedded those into the full 400 staff member kickoff. And what we've been able to do throughout the last month and a half as a portrait team is start looking at building, I hate to use the word audits, sorry Matt, but building audits where we're looking at, so we've tasked principals with taking a look at their schools, taking a look at the initiatives that are going on within their schools, and seeing where those fit in terms of the landscape of Portrait of a Learner. So it's been data driven so far, and we've got areas of strength, and certainly we've got areas of growth. What we're doing right now, and in fact it just happened last week, is we're turning the corner from aspirational statements and large themes into sitting in a room with 6 principals and determining exactly what we're going to be doing and how we're going to be measuring it, and trying to come to an agreement with a room full of people who have very different ideas of what success looks like within their schools. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing because we're all autonomous and we all define success in our own ways. But the conversation with the principals is passionate, and it's about what we're doing together and what we can do together. So it's taken a while, and it's hard work. But I'm proud of the work that we're doing right now. We do have a draft of these goals, which we chewed on for about 2 hours last week in full-on conversation. We still have more to do. So rather than giving you something that we're not, fully behind 100%, we'll have to wait. Unfortunately, the timing's weird right now. We have, you guys have a November joint board meeting. We don't have a Portrait of a Learner meeting until November. We've got a couple admin meetings in November, so it has to be the joint board meeting after that in January. I apologize for that, but what I'll say is I'm proud of the work in that room that they're doing. And to be honest, the conversation is probably more beneficial than the written goals that we come out with at the end of the day. So I'm happy to answer questions. It's sneaky good news, but sorry to disappoint. I wish I had a nice little PowerPoint.
Thank you for all the hard work you're doing on it though, because I know it's not easy, but I love the fact that you brought in everybody. Do you know what I mean? And that's just, it speaks to the program itself, is when you go to all the shareholders, which has been amazing.
The level of passion coming from our principals has been unbelievable. They care, and they're reading it. So that's the best part.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Dave. Next item, the event at the Brook. Anyone want to speak about that, or?
So I think
I think we
people
did
spoke
cover it,
earlier.
yeah.
It was requested to be on the agenda, so I think we've already addressed it, but.
Okay. Alrighty. Future meetings, exciting stuff. Next meeting, SAU 21 Joint Board Public Hearing and Meeting, Monday, November 6th
6 o'clock.
at 6 p.m. SAU 21 Operations Committee meeting, Thursday, January 18th. I don't know what the time of that is, but we're going on.
I'm getting there.
Sorry.
5:30.
5:30. And the next meeting, SAU 21 Joint Board Committee Policy Committee meeting, January 22nd
At 5.
at 5, but it's got the wrong year.
Oh, the wrong year.
Wrong year.
We're going backwards.
Groundhog Day. And then we, have SAU 21 Joint Board meeting Monday, January 29th at 6 o'clock, I imagine.
Yes.
Okay. Do we need to go into?
What's the public hearing on the November 6th?
Your budget, the SAU budget.
Oh, okay.
I asked that question too.
I'm glad it was.
We're here again?
Yeah. So we won't have operations committee meeting before that.
Correct.
Historically, I haven't done the presentation again, but I'm happy to on request.
That's nice of you to offer.
I might like
Very
this
nice.
again.
I mean, 3 times is a charm. 3 times a charm.
Do we have any business for non-public? We do not. Okay, so since we do not have any business for non-public, I, thank you. Thank you.
Stole it right from me.
It's on top of it.
I'll second.
Second. All right.
I don't care.